Young people, let me begin by confessing that I had you in mind when I wrote my sermon this week, because this will probably be the only opportunity I have you all right there. But may I extend an invitation to you to come back. You know, there's no age limit with respect to worship here at Kenilworth Union Church. Young fellow had obviously overheard his parents and teachers talking, said one day to his mother, "Mom, do I have to be gifted? Why can't I be like the other kids?" The Apostle Paul begins the 12th chapter of his letter to his friends in Rome, which Ali read for us this morning, with high words about searching out the will of God for our lives. But then he goes on to talk about what? He talks about finding our own individual gifts and using them for the good of the community. Now, frankly, this is a word that is countercultural. That is, it runs against the grain of the way most people think out there. The script around here, I think, is clear to any young person, certainly these young people. You need good grades. You need extracurricular activities to fill in your college application. You need certain service activities to prove that you're really not wrapped up in yourself. You need to be articulate and present yourself well, and the result, with a little luck, will be a top university, an excellent entry-level job, a compatible companion for life, a home in the right neighborhood, and pray God, a couple of gifted children. When we talk about the gifted child, we clearly have certain gifts in mind that others apparently don't have. Now, there's nothing wrong with the script and story I just read out, except that we think we know what gifts get us there. The gift of high IQ, for example, or the gift of artistic and athletic ability, the gift of drive and ambition, the gift of persuasion and popularity. The gifts we think make a difference in our life story. Of course, this produces all kinds of scary anxiety in parents and grandparents, I would add, because it suggests that our children might not have the gifts that will get them there, fulfill the dream that we harbor for them. What if he comes home and announces that he's going to be an actor? At age 16, Ed Wynn, you don't remember Ed Wynn, but some of us here do, Ed Wynn decided to leave home and join a theater company. His father was appalled. "A son of mine on the stage, I'll be disgraced. What if the neighbors find out?" "I'll change my name," the young Wynn volunteered. "Change your name," his father screamed. "What if you're a success? How will the neighbors know?" Helen Hayes, in her autobiography, as you may know, great actress, tells of an occasion when her mother's enthusiasm got the better of her. "From the time I was a small child," she writes, "no artist appeared in Washington whom I did not see and hear. When Mischa Elman was scheduled to play, Mother and I went off to perch in the balcony. And Mother was still certain that the violin might be my career, and she was trying to convince Dad to pay for lessons. During the concert, she noticed a new shine in my eyes, a new glow on my face, and she brought me home on a wave of heightened enthusiasm. 'Frank,' she began smugly, 'look at your daughter.' My dad tried to interrupt. 'Essie, we've just heard Mischa Elman, and look at her, she's transported.' 'Essie, I told you she had music in her soul. How many children would be so exhilarated by such great music? Have you ever seen her eyes that bright?' 'Never,' my dad said. 'And look at her neck, she's got the measles.'" In the long run, though, this may be entirely too narrow a focus on what really counts in life. A report some of you may have read from a Jerusalem consulting firm. Thank you for submitting the resumes of the 12 men you've picked for managerial positions. All of them have now taken our battery of aptitude tests, have had personal interviews with our psychologist. In our opinion, most of your nominees are lacking in background, education, and aptitude for the enterprise you're undertaking. Simon Peter is emotional and unstable. Andrew has absolutely no leadership qualities. Thomas demonstrates a questioning attitude that could undermine morale. Matthew has been blacklisted by the Greater Jerusalem Better Business Bureau. James definitely has radical leanings. One of the candidates does show some potential. He's a man of ability and resourcefulness, keen business mind, strong contacts in influential circles, very ambitious, adept with financial matters. We would recommend Judas as your controller and chief operating officer. Now, the point of the simple little story is not that Jesus went out to choose incompetence. It was that he saw qualities in people that do not register on the average aptitude test. Important qualities, gifts, if you will. Interestingly, the world of research is beginning to talk about our gifts in much broader terms, much closer to the way our faith talks. Harvard University's Bruce Torf writes of multiple intelligences that work in many different combinations. He writes, I may be a genius at math, you may have what it takes to be a playwright. I may be able to find my way home from Toledo without a map. You may be able to juggle 4 ping pong balls and a watermelon. I might remember every detail of my wedding day. You might be a gifted pianist. In other words, we all have our own talents and intelligences. Contrary to the conception that we all lie at some exact point on a single line between smart and dumb, we actually are all smart in our own particular ways, which is much closer to the way the apostle urges us to see ourselves. Everybody has their own special gifts given by God. And interestingly, the more important gifts, according to him, have nothing to do with IQ or athletic ability or artistic achievement. And in the long run, they may make a more critical difference when it comes to our own happiness and the well-being of our life together in community, where everybody's gift counts. The difference between the culture out there and what we hope is the culture in here can be described as the difference between the American theater and the English repertory theater. A repertoire theater is a theater where the same group of people play one play after another, time to time, rotating, if you will, the longer parts, the more briefer parts. In America, our independent, ego-oriented, personality-driven theater always seems to focus where? On the star. Mel Gibson, Liv Ullmann, name your own, a big recognizable name. The rest of the crew, well, they do the best they can, hoping someday they'll do well enough that somebody will recognize them and make them a star. In British productions, in the English repertory system, there is no such thing as a minor or bit part, no matter how small it may appear to be. Every role is seen as essential and important in pushing the drama along. Thus, there is honor and integrity in doing your own role well as a portion of the whole which is larger than the part. In this tradition of the repertory theater, there is no star, and yet everybody is a star. And that's a beautiful picture of what our families and our church and even our community ought to be, a place where every gift is valued. Because this is the truth. Real community exists only when the contribution of everyone is hungered for, expected, encouraged, and needed. And I mean everyone. My wife and I, some years ago when we lived in Germany, were asked to go to a very special village called Bethel in English. A village founded by Friedrich von Bodelschwingh to care for 3,000 unfortunates, the epileptics, the crippled, people limited in one way or another. In fact, Friedrich von Bodelschwingh was the only one who was able to stand up to Hitler and say, "You will not exterminate these people." Dietrich Bonhoeffer, German theologian and martyr under the Nazis, at a crucial time in his career was concerned about the laws which might have meant the liquidation of these people, and he visited Bethel. It's a marvelous community, it's still there. And while he was there, he wrote a letter to his grandmother. "Dear Grandma, the time spent here in Bethel has made a deep impression on me. Here one simply finds a segment of people who know what is important and what is not important. I've just returned from a worship service. It's remarkable to see there crowds of epileptics and handicapped and other sick, filling the entire church, and scattered among them the deaconesses and deacons who must help if someone falls. But nevertheless, the scene is dominated by these sick and disabled who listen so intently to the word of God's love. Indeed, these unfortunate ones must have a unique feeling for life, since they certainly cannot have control over themselves and must be prepared at any moment for the illness to seize them. And I really came aware of this in church today for the first time. Their very helplessness may open them with greater clarity to a reality that we healthy ones do not easily confront. The fact that we are all finally helpless. So in these whom we call the sick, there may be at deeper levels of their being something healthier than in us, the so-called healthy. In any event, the simple reality is this: they know that we all need one another and one another's love. So life together in real family, real church is always in a sense countercultural, because the larger culture out there will always value some people over others. Those with the power or prestige or limelight or athletic prowess or money or sensational performance. The larger culture assigns contribution along very narrow lines, and in so doing can actually destroy the importance of many. And you know that. The gifts that the apostle recites are really quite surprising. The gift of inspiring those around you. The gift of administration, interestingly. The gift of teaching. The gift of giving good counsel. The gift of generosity. Ever think of that as a gift? The gift of being sensitive to those in distress. Ever think of that as perhaps your gift? Article in a New York City newspaper. Parents of a 15-year-old named Billy became increasingly worried when the boy's temperature kept rising. When it reached 105 degrees, he was rushed off to the hospital, and blood tests soon revealed that he had leukemia. Then Billy developed pneumonia, and for 10 days, mother and father were at his bedside almost constantly. The doctors were frank, telling Billy that he'd have to undergo extended chemotherapy. They tried to encourage him to believe that there was a good chance of remission, but naturally he became quite depressed. Day after Billy was admitted to the hospital, he looked around his room and said to his mother, "I thought you got flowers when you were in the hospital." An aunt happened to be standing nearby, and so she called the local florist. "I want an attractive plant," she said. "It's for my teenage nephew who has leukemia." "Oh," said the salesperson, "I'll add some fresh-cut flowers to brighten it up." When the arrangement arrived at the hospital, Billy was feeling strong enough to sit up. He opened the envelope and read his aunt's card. Then he saw another card tucked behind some of the leaves down in the plant. It read, "Billy, I took the telephone order for these flowers. I work at the flower shop. I had leukemia when I was 7 years old. I'm 22 now. My heart goes out to you. I will be praying for you. God bless you. Sincerely, Janice Brady." That's all. The newspaper reporter heard about this and interviewed Janice Brady. When Billy's aunt told me that the boy had leukemia, it reminded me of when I first learned that I had it, and I knew what the boy was going through, and I felt for him. I wanted him to know that you really can get better, so I slipped the card into the envelope. I haven't been working here very long, and I was afraid I might get into trouble. It's funny, writes the reporter. Billy was in a hospital with millions of dollars, the most sophisticated medical equipment. He was being treated by expert doctors with medical training totaling in the hundreds of years, but it was a sales clerk in a flower shop, a woman making $170 a week, who by taking the time and thought to care, being willing to go with what her heart told her to do, gave Billy the strength and hope to turn the corner, the will to carry on. Mark Connolly, a playwright, writes about the countless obscure people who quietly affect the lives of those around them for good, without even being aware that they're doing it sometimes, winning no commendation and expecting none. He writes, "Everybody at one time or another has known such people, strangers, relatives, friends, who have changed the quality of life for others. They come into a room in a dark hour, a sick room, say, or a death room, or a room without hope, or merely in an hour when we're lonely or discouraged, and they may say little, if anything, but the shining quality of their generosity radiates from their mere presence. And where there was darkness, there's now light. Where there was cowardice, there's now courage. Where there was listlessness, there is love for life. And these friends and relatives, or wonderful strangers, all these humble and unaware, carry with them the gifts of kindness and generosity. And everyone has his or her share. We all have our unique and important combination, which is absolutely indispensable to the whole, every one of us. He says, even as the organs and limbs of a human body are absolutely indispensable to the whole. And what a different way this is of picturing our own individual lives and human community than the current picture, where wealth and celebrity and power and charisma are supposed to be the important human qualities, the way to happiness in life. And not only do we have our own special gifts to give, we're also, if you stop and think about it, therefore, right here, even now, we are surrounded by the gifts of all those we know, gifts that they want to give us. Dr. Rachel Ramen tells this story. I can clearly remember something that happened when I was in third grade. I was walking with my mother on a downtown street in New York City, pushing our way through the crowd, our way to where I don't even remember. I'd just been put into a special class at school because I'd done well on an IQ test, and my teacher had told us that being in her class meant that we were brighter than most of the people in the whole country. As we moved through the hurrying crowds, I remembered this and was filled with an 8-year-old's outrageous pride. I whispered to my mother that my teacher had said that I was smarter than all these people going by us. She stopped immediately. She knelt down so that we were at eye level with each other. And as the crowd flowed past us on either side, she told me that every one of those people passing by had a secret wisdom. Each of them knew something more about how to live, about being happy, about loving than I did. And it'll always be that way, she told me. It's how things are. I looked again at that crowd and I actually felt that I wanted to know them, to learn from them. Shortly after I became a physician, I had a dream that was so powerful that I remembered it even though I didn't understand it at first. In the dream, I was standing at the threshold of a door. I seem to have been standing there for a long time. People are passing through the door. I can't see where they're going or where they've come from, but somehow that doesn't seem to matter. I meet them one by one in the doorway, and as they pass through, they stop and look into my face for a moment, and then they hand me something, each one something different. And they say, here is something for you to keep. And then they go on, and I feel enormously grateful. And suddenly I understand the meaning of the dream because I remember the moment on the New York street with my mother. Some people pass through on their way through our lives, lives that we may never see again even, some of them. Others pass through on their way to death and the unknown. But every single one of them leaves something with us. When I awoke from that dream, I had a sense of the value of every single life. Every single life. The apostle writes to his friends, there are many different gifts, but it's always the same Spirit